Has been reborn, introducing the new Hoyo de Monterey. At Hoyo, they're about craft. From seed to soil to sunshine and rain, they obsess over their labors. With skillful hands and passionate souls, they create. They do not settle. They do not concede. They are Hoyo de Monterey, and this is their craft. Experience the uniquely handcrafted Hoyo de Monterey at hoyocigars.com. The highly sought-after Punch Rare Corojo is back for 2016. Rare Corojo is made with a dark Sumatra wrapper and fillers from Honduras, Nicaragua, and the Dominican Republic, giving you a powerful yet rich smoke. These highly coveted and revered cigars are only made in small quantities once a year, so get them while you can. This is a punch classic that you can't pass up. CAO has brought you iconic cigars over the years. Brasilia, Italia, La Traviata, done in a playful nature with a unique twist. Travel to the exciting world of CAO and back in just under an hour with any of the groundbreaking CAO World Blends. Test the boundaries of style with new age brands in the 95 rated Flathead. Honor the past with new classics like Pilon. Treat your palate to an array of flavors with Soulfire and Moon Trance. At CAO, the experiences are limitless. So what's your next move?
Welcome back to the Stogie Geeks Show, episode 190. Will Cooper from Studio C in North Carolina. Mark and the team manning the controls up at the G Unit studio in Rhode Island, and special guest co-host tonight, John, the cigar surgeon, Reiner. And John, we're going to get into really our staple of the show, which is the Stogies of the Week, where we talk about what we've been smoking recently.
It's actually one of my favorite parts of the show. I mean, there's a lot of favorite parts of my show, but I love the Stogies of the Week because it's kind of an off-the-cuff, what are you just smoking as a regular day-to-day thing, and I love listening to it.
Awesome. I'll kind of kick it off. I guess I'll go kick it off. This is a cigar that, the first cigar I'm going to talk about is a cigar that it got some buzz about 4 months ago when it was announced. And it was probably because of the branding of the cigar, it was interesting. The cigar is called, and I'm going to actually pronounce this, I think, correctly, Rauchvergnügen. Rauchvergnügen, number 40.
Sounds very German, my friend.
It is a German-engineered cigar. So, yeah, this press release came out in April when I had the flu. I'll never forget it, and it kind of cheered me up. And you know, it was an interesting. You had some guys dressed up as engineers, you know, sort of announcing a product. That the product had this like design. It has a blue and white band on it that looks like an engineering design label on it. But the Rauchvergnügen is a number 42. Is a cigar that is made at a factory called Inter Cigar in the Dominican Republic. Have you heard of that factory, John?
That doesn't actually ring any bells for me.
It didn't for me either. I did some research on it, and it's a factory, I guess, that's done a lot more in the house blend area. So I had not heard of this factory. The blend, what they say, is an Ecuadorian hybrid wrapper, a Dominican Criollo 98 binder, and a filler that is Piloto Cubano from the Dominican Republic, some Nicaraguan tobacco, and some Pennsylvania, which I'm assuming we hear more and more that Pennsylvania is used to give it a little strength.
What's interesting, sorry to cut you off there, Coop, I was just going to say, what's interesting to me is that the Ecuadorian wrappers, I know we talk about San Andreas, but those Ecuadorian wrappers have really been hitting on all cylinders across the market lately.
They really have, and you know, there's no doubt right now that this year is going to be the Ecuadorian wrapper year. Whether it's Connecticut Shade or Habano or Sumatra, or Corojo, I'm seeing a lot of that. But especially what I'm hearing right now, John, with some talk about San Andreas tobacco being in tight demand right now.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see the big San Andreas because right now that wrapper is a lot more scarce, I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I think you've talked about this on Stogie Geeks before, is that San Andreas is the new hotness, but obviously it becomes not available or very expensive, which is a part of being not available. People are going to rotate back to that Ecuadorian, but you look at some of the top cigars on your list, some of the top cigars on our list, a lot of them are featuring Ecuadorian wrappers.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And, you know, it's interesting because San Andreas, we were told from Nick Malillo, what led the charge with that was a shortage in Brazilian Matafina.
Interesting.
That's what he had told us back on our 3-year anniversary show. So I guess it kind of goes in these patterns. But right now, there's no doubt the wrappers coming out of Ecuador. And when you get into these Ecuadorian wrappers, especially the Habanos, they have such color variations. You can see anything from a light brown wrapper to a dark oily wrapper to a reddish wrapper, which I find is very versatile. But the Rothenhugen, number 42, is a 4 3/4 by 54 Robusto. And what they did is this company is the German engineering part. I don't know if they're necessarily using these high design techniques for their cigar. I don't think they're doing that. Okay, I think it's a hand. I think they're making it by hand like everybody else. But I guess what they really did is they really took a go-to-market approach. And when I was reading about this, is they really went back to their consumer base. They went to retailers, to some of their distributors, and they did a lot of test marketing with this cigar. That's what they came up with the end result. They've done a limited run, which is selling right now in these 2-pack slip cases, which eventually they're going to expand it out to full boxes right now. So they're taking you can actually order these cigars too from their website. I actually did get a couple of them from these guys. So how's the cigar? Overall, I think the cigar had some great flavors over the first 2/3. It had a great natural tobacco component. It had that creamy component I hear Rob talk a lot about that I think it really made it smooth. The problem I had with this cigar is the last third of this cigar, and I smoked 3 of these. Every one of them, it got hot. And it harshed out the cigar in that last third, which would have basically turned... I ended up giving the cigar a 5 because I think there was 2/3 of that cigar where it was really producing, but that last third took it down a notch. I think there's certainly, I don't know if it's the what I got from them as the samples, but it's a cigar I think that's got some potential, including some aging potential. So I do think it's a cigar. Like I said, I would say I'd give it a shot and put 5 of them in my humidor and see what happens.
So if the flavor profile carried through from the middle third or the first third and was consistent to the last third, where do you this is obviously way out there, where do you think that would land if it wasn't so harsh in that last third?
I would have been a box split.
Box split.
It would have been a box split. If the first 2/3 were just average, this would have been a try one, but I really think they had something going on with the flavor of the cigar the first 2/3. But, in normal cases, if it was just an average flavor profile, probably would have been a try one. But, yeah, I'd say box split. The cigar in U.S. dollars isn't cheap. It's about $11, too. But it was something different. It wasn't a cookie-cutter cigar by any means, which I think from my perspective, I was, like I said, I was really enjoying this cigar. But each one of these, they burned hot in the last third. I couldn't figure out why.
That's really unfortunate because I think if you have a first third that is a bit of a letdown or has a slow lead up to where the profile is, it's kind of like a movie. If you finish strong, I think that cigar is going to in your mind resonate a lot more. But if it finishes poorly, it's really tough because that's the part that sort of sticks with you. You remember that first 2/3, but you're like, yeah, but it kind of had to pitch it at the last third.
And it's a short cigar.
Yeah.
So 4 3/4, it's a short cigar, so it's a shorter compressed window I had of that first 2/3.
Wow. So talking about my Stogies of the week, the cigar that's coming up tomorrow actually for review, which I'm going to be up late writing this, and I think you've had a chance to review this. This is the Quick Draw Connecticut, the short Panatella from Southern Draw.
Oh yeah, I want to hear about this one.
Now, I'm just going to preface by saying I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to Connecticut's because I enjoy Connecticut, but I'm not a Connecticut smoker per se. I find that you can make a really good Connecticut and it delivers that classic Connecticut flavors. But for me, I'm looking for more complexity. I'm looking for more body. I was shocked. I was shocked at how much body Robert brought with this cigar. And this is going to land really high on my list. I rated this a box buy, and I'm going to get a lot of crap from Logan on this because, especially being a Connecticut, I tend not to rate things in a box buy unless it's really, really good. I was getting a lot of a sweet cedar, a little bit of light pepper and spices, but not a lot, like just enough to give it that sort of extra oomph. And then in the middle, it had this wonderful chocolate that developed and just kind of evolved the body of the cigar. And it finished like I smoked this thing right down to the nub. And I was like, when you find a cigar like that, it's kind of one of those golden cigars where like, I didn't know Connecticut's could taste like this. And I mean, the Vitola is perfect for me, a short panatella. It's a good smoking time. You can smoke that in 45, 50 minutes, which is a good smoking time. And to deliver that much body within a Connecticut, yeah, it was a no-brainer box buy. And I don't hand out a lot of box buys.
That's Paul and I both had. Paul smoked the short Corona. I smoked the short panatella. We both gave it a box split. So we did.
Yeah.
We were very high on that one. And I kind of agree with you on that for the most part. I didn't quite get the chocolate note on that, but I did smoke this much earlier than probably you did. And I'm assuming they're probably from a similar run we've had. So it's possible I smoked it back at the end of April, so it's 6 weeks ago. So, and Paul and I both felt, we probably smoked it a little earlier in our cycle than we normally do, but we both felt that this cigar had some serious aging potential down the road.
No question. So what else you got next in your Stogies of the week?
So I'm going to go to the opposite extreme. I smoked the Sindicato Maniac Colossal.
I want to hear about this.
I've seen some good cigars from Sindicato, and I've seen some not so good cigars from Sindicato.
Yeah.
I think the stuff they did with Casa Fernandez was off the charts.
Off the charts.
That Maduro is fantastic. Hex didn't do it for me. I'm sorry, but Hex didn't do it for me. This cigar, they went for a 70 ring gauge, which this is not any. So when I review a 70 ring gauge, John, the first thing I'm going to say is this cigar is not going to lose points out of the gate because I have a preconceived notion about a 7x70.
Good for you.
So what we're going to, Paul and I, that's the approach we take. Now, we could say that maybe the blend doesn't work as well in a 70, right? But this is an all 70 ring gauge line. It's either a 7x70 in a Parejo or 7x70 in a Torpedo, with Gran Bellicoso, they call it. I smoked the Parejo, which is the 7x70. They're making the cigar with American Caribbean cigars in Nicaragua, which for folks who know what comes at it, there's a lot. They used to make a lot of the Tarano cigars. I think they still do make some of them. Don't hold me to that, but they did work with Tarano extensively. They work with Gurkha a lot on their Nicaraguan blends as well. And they have their own brand called La Rosa de San Diego. Ecuadorian Habano 2000 wrapper again. All Nicaraguan binder and filler. Performed very, very nicely as a 70 ring gauge. There was some nice sweetness. I think the natural tobacco in the cigar had a sweetness that wasn't. A lot of people don't like an overly spicy cigar. I don't like an overly sweet cigar. Okay. So I think it was in a good. There was a mint-like finish on this note that made it a clean finish on there.
Interesting.
So those are some positives. What it didn't have, it was a good cigar. It just didn't have a wow factor.
Yeah.
And I think the safe thing to say. It burned well, but it didn't have a lot of complexity either. It was a milder cigar too. I mean, this thing was mild to medium in both strength and body at the beginning, and it kind of will finish. It will kind of progress to medium with both of those. Again, while I think the blend was good. I wouldn't. The 7x70 didn't affect it positive or negatively. I think it was a decent smoke. If you're a 70 ring gauge guy who wants something in that upper mild to medium range, good cigar. Price point is $8, so you're getting plenty of cigar.
That's a steal for 770. Yeah.
Yeah, 7x7, great construction on it. I gave it. I had to touch the burn up a little. I mean, but a little more than I like, but not. It wasn't a hopeless cause touch up burn. I gave it a 5 as well on this one.
That's a pretty good rating. I think the problem with a cigar that size, and I am a bit of a snob when it comes to larger cigars because I think it's tough to blend. I mean, you're talking about a very long smoking experience, so you can't come out of the gate with a huge amount of body because your palate gets exhausted by the time you're an hour in. And by the same token, you can't blow out a guy who's going to smoke a 770 for 3 hours because if there's too much body, he's not going to be able to smoke the entire thing. So that's a tough. I feel like for a blending perspective, that's got to be a tough cigar to blend for.
I agree. Now, a 5, you may be saying from a Stogie Geeks, you weren't wowed by it, but the way I kind of look at that 5 rating, this merit-wise, it scored like an 88 numerically, which which is still pretty decent, right? But
Yeah.
I look at Joe, my buddy Joe in the cigar shop, okay, who is just there to smoke a cigar and have a good time. And that's where I'm kind of putting the rating for is a fiver for someone who is maybe not the uber stogie geek, but would get 5 of these and keep them in his humidor and enjoy them.
I think at $8, there's a huge value proponent that for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Going back to a review I did the other week, one I actually surprisingly had not touched before, and I mean, there's so many cigars in the market, it's tough to get them all. But the Diamond Crown Julius Caesar, I've not smoked that before. That was my first experience.
I got to make a comment before that.
Roger that.
Yesterday would have been my grandfather's 100th birthday. He had a nickname of Reeves,
Okay.
and his birthday was June 12th. He was born June 12th, 1916. It was the same day that Stanford Newman, who was Julius Caesar's son, who ran the company a long time, was born.
Wow.
So 100 years. So kind of an appropriate cigar. So
No
go
kidding.
ahead. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt
that's-
that.
No,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's
Yeah,
a nice
a rep
touch.
told me that yesterday, which was amazing. So I did smoke. I don't have what I'm going to talk about. I didn't take notes on it was Quest Array, but yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was surprised. I think, regardless of how blind we try to be going into a review, you do have some preconceived notions. I know this is a pretty popular cigar in the market, and for me, popularity doesn't necessarily resonate with flavor. So I always approach for flavor. This is a really good cigar. It's one of those cigars that starts out and sort of leads you into the profile. So it starts out with a sweet nuttiness, light cedar, and then just continues to build. So by the time you get into the halfway point, it's got this rich cocoa, this like a powdery cocoa chocolate to it, and then we talk about the last third being so important. It finished with this great intense spice in the last third, so your palate didn't get burned out. I really enjoyed this cigar. I rated it a 5. We don't typically take into account the price, and this isn't a knock on the cigar, but when you have a cigar in that sort of $12 plus price point, you really do have to deliver a good smoking experience, because if someone buys a $12 plus cigar and they don't have a good experience, you can pretty much guarantee they're not going to spend it again. I think in this case, even as a 5, taking that price into perspective, this cigar delivered for sure.
John, what size was that? What size did you smoke again?
There's a Toro.
Okay. Yeah, Paul and I recently went through a few of the Robustos, and they age fantastic, I'll just say.
I could see that.
Yeah, they really do. They really do. Yeah, that's a good cigar.
What do you
Moving
got next up?
I got a cigar. I got a shop exclusive from Espinosa. It's the Cream City MKE by Espinosa Cigars.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah. Espinosa, they've actually been quietly building a pretty big shop exclusive portfolio. This one went to a cigar shop in Milwaukee, which is called Metro Cigars. And Milwaukee, we all know it as the beer city.
Absolutely.
But they're also called. But they're also known They're also known as the Cream City because of the cream-colored brick that adorns much of the architecture of the downtown buildings, or the old downtown. Yeah, which I never knew that. So they're like these cream, light yellow bricks. We used to see some of those in New York as well, but apparently it was a big thing in Milwaukee. The blend's a little different from the Espinosa formula. It's got an Ecuadorian wrapper, Ecuadorian Habano Rosado wrapper, a Nicaraguan binder, and yeah, that Rosado wrapper, I'll just say, has a little bit of that cinnamon color to it.
Yep.
It's not a creamy looking wrapper. The filler is Nicaraguan, but here's the kicker. It's got Honduran in the filler. According to Hector Alfonso, this is really the first time Espinosa's played with Honduran tobacco.
Yeah, I don't remember a time they've ever used Honduran tobacco ever.
No, I haven't either. If they have, they haven't disclosed it.
Yeah.
And I'll say this: the cigar you're definitely going to get some of that Honduran influence in that. Good natural tobacco sweetness. There's some nice white pepper, earthy notes. So you're going to get that earthy note component definitely in there. A little bit of a mixed fruit sweetness that I'd say accents the natural tobacco notes. So it just kind of gives it a little more sweetness. It has a little bit of that. Honduran tobacco puros, a lot of them, not puros, but when there's Honduran tobacco, it tends to have a drying effect on the palate.
Yeah.
you're going to get a little bit of that. But there's enough going on. Otherwise, with the cigar that's going on, I'd say it mitigates some of that dryness. But if you just don't have any tolerance for dryness, you're not gonna have tolerance for this. But it's not overly dry. There's a lot. I could name some that are a lot drier. So I mean, it's good. It's a cigar that I'd say in the first half medium strength, medium bodied. It goes to medium to full for both of those in the second half. Great construction. I gave it a box split.
Wow.
It's an $8 cigar. Good value, something different from Espinosa that, I don't know how much he's going to be around. So, if you're an Espinosa fan, you're definitely going to want to try this cigar.
Nice. Talking about Espinosa, and I didn't do this intentionally. I was on the road for quite a long time, so I had the chance to kind of go back and smoke some cigars for me, which I don't get to do very often. And I revisited the Protocol Corona Gorda from Cubaquino. Or Cubaqueno. Sorry, Cubaqueno. Rob's going to bust my balls for that.
Cubataqueño.
Cubataqueño. Rob has me practicing that. It's a very tough name to say. Cubataqueño.
Oh, let me tell you, beforehand, I interviewed those guys at Espinosa Palooza, and I had to have Juan write it on a card for me, all right, to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
and
tough
I might
name.
have just got it wrong. It's a tough name, yeah. But go ahead.
Cubataqueño. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So originally I reviewed this when it came out at the IPCPR. This was the Cigar of the Year candidate for me when it originally came out, but there was a lot of strong releases at the IPCPR. So my original rating was a 90 box split. When I smoked this, and this has been sitting in my humidor for a while, this is absolutely an upgrade. And I think this is one of those cigars that has immense aging potential. No doubt because of the amount of Ligero that's in there. I think it's going to age out, and it's going to age well. I would give this, revisiting it, this is a box buy, no question, like a hard box buy. It's got spices and pepper and citrus, but not over. And it's remarkable to think that there's that much Ligero in this, but the pepper and the spices and the citrus are not overpowering. They're very nuanced. They're very subtle, and it's, I hear myself saying that, and it's shocking to think with that much Ligero that they can be that nuanced. It evolves well. Talking about the last third, it's got this nice earthy and leather, and I'm a little sensitive to leather. I don't typically like a lot of leather because I find it coats my palate, but it was just enough to give you that a little bit of oomph and twang in your post-draw palate. Wonderful, amazing cigar. 100%. It's a hard box buy for me.
Have you tried the Lancero yet?
No, it's on my wish list. Juan said he's got one set aside for me for the IPCPR, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't counting down the days to try that out.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
That took, in my opinion, and I like the Corona Gorda as well. I had it in a 90 box split. It went to 92 box worthy with the Lancero.
Wow.
You made a really good point. There's some citrus on that cigar that, in my opinion, sometimes citrus could be a sign of youngness.
Yep.
But it's not with this cigar. It's subtle. It adds some sweetness to it. I think whatever they did, like I said this on the show last week when I found out, or a couple weeks ago, when I found out those guys were doing a Lancero, I wanted to say to them, "Were you guys nuts?"
Yeah, that's crazy.
But he's like, but they knew they had something special with that cigar. That Lancero, I think you're really going to be pleased. I'd be surprised if you don't come back and say it's the better size. But I'm curious when you do smoke it.
I'm looking forward to it. So what do you got up next?
So we actually were just talking about this person earlier. I have a cigar from Andre Farkas, the Viaje Holiday Blend 2015.
Nice.
Which finally I got around to smoking. So the Holiday Blend 2015, the Holiday Blend's been around since 2009, every year except for 2013, where they took a year off with that Holiday Blend. It's probably one of the more popular cigars that Andre's done. And I think from year to year it's varied, in terms of which ones are better than others. But this year they made some big changes with this cigar. For starters, they are making the cigar out of the PDR Cigar Factory in the Dominican Republic.
Interesting.
Yep. The second thing is they box pressed this cigar.
Ooh, okay.
Nice. So it wasn't box pressed before. Andre has done box presses, but this was the first time the Holiday Blend was box pressed. And while much of the blend is not disclosed, he's using a Brazilian Arapiraca wrapper for this, which I thought was really, really interesting. So it's a completely different cigar. The one thing I'll say about a lot of the Holiday Blends, and this one's no exception, There's some strong cigars, those holiday blends.
Absolutely.
Everyone talks Skull and Bones. I'm telling you, this one's a full strength, full bodied powerhouse. Um, it's got that Arapiraca wrapper, which at times I think can be musty. All right,
Yeah,
but not
it's a
with
good way
this.
to put it.
Yeah, it could be very like there's. I know a lot of people. There's certain Arapiraca wrapper cigars that are popular. The Exodus by Tarano is a good example. I do find that a little musty, even though I think it's a good cigar. But
Yep.
this one didn't have that mustiness to it. It seemed like it was whatever they did with the rest of the blend, it worked. They captured a lot of the qualities of the old holiday blend with those coffee notes, a little bit of like a little bit of that cherry sweetness that's in there at times, and they got that strength. I think this is for sure in there. I thought it worked real well in the box press. The construction was excellent. He's had good consistency from PDR since he's gone there. He hasn't had any duds come out of that factory. And this is a very good cigar. I gave this one also a box split.
Wow, that's a solid rating.
It's a solid rating. It's again, I think it is a. I think they also came out the Candy Cane, which is the box press barber pole, which I still
Yep.
have to smoke that one, which I'll be in the next few weeks. But and I tend to just there's so much Viaje I smoke. That's why I'm so many months behind on it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a lot of a high product on the market.
But I also but this one was like I said, 6 months of age on it, smoking great.
Nice.
What do you?
So turning to the Habanos side of things, and I don't tend to review a lot of Habanos just because there's so many Nicaraguan products on the market and non-Cuban products on the market. I bought a pile of these when I was in Cuba last. It's the Ramon Iones Club Iones, and it's the 2015 edition limitada. Now, one of the nice things you can do, and I think this is, to me, what's interesting about Cuban tobacco, or potentially bad, you can smoke a particular box code and it's good. You can smoke a particular box code of the same cigar and it's great. And in this case, I had the fortune of being down there to smoke about 4 different box codes, and it came down to 2 different box codes for me. It was the OPG and the RAE. The OPGs were box split. They were good, but they weren't great. The RAE is one of these cigars where I got about 5 minutes in and I went, I need to buy a box of this immediately. I can't wait. If I can't get my hands on this, I'm going to be very, very disappointed. So this has got obviously some age on it because I bought these back in November. They've been resting in my humidor. The RAE starts out with just this. Like I qualified as being, it's like smoking a Kit Kat bar. Like it's like smoking a chocolate bar. There's so much chocolate up front, and you think, okay, well that's good, but I hope it's not only that. And then you get this really nuanced spices, which I find with Cuban cigars, not very often you get a lot of spices. So
No, you don't.
you don't. So I got chocolate, I got spices, I got a little bit of drying cedar. I'm not a big fan of the drying mouthfeel. We talked a little bit about that. But then it sort of starts out at a mild level, and it just builds up to almost a medium plus by the time you're done the cigar. And I ended up picking up 4 boxes of these when I was down there. And this is one of those cigars where I'm glad I did, because I think this is going to age out brilliantly.
What's the size of that Vitola?
That's a good question. I should have written that down. I want to say it's not a Robusto. It's like a Corona Gorda.
Mhm.
So it's like a 5x46, which is
Okay.
a good Vitola. I like the Cuban Vitolas for being smaller than 50 ring gauge, because I like the nuance you can get in that. So it's about an hour and 15 minutes smoking time. Yeah, like I said, I'm really, really glad I picked up multiple boxes of this bad boy.
Yeah, at least you have a little bit more of the option to go do that. We have to go through some back channels there.
That's right.
I haven't had that cigar. I got to give that cigar a shot.
You might have a chance to give that cigar a shot at the IPCPR. Just saying.
Okay, yeah, there may be some floating around, right?
You never know.
Awesome.
What do you got
All right.
next?
All right, here's my last smoke.
Right.
And this was my smoke of the week. And so smoke of the week, we usually it's an informal thing. They say this is probably the best cigar we smoked over the last week. This is from a completely unlikely source. I think Stogie Geeks are going to be all surprised by this. It's an H. Upman Ingot the Banker Private Holding.
Okay.
You say so. Look, so this was a line extension, a limited edition line extension that they did to the H. Upman Banker line. I know yeah, I didn't think the H. Upmann Banker line was a line that lit me on fire. All right, and I think that's a lot of the feedback I've gotten from people. Uh, that being said, I kind of try everything that's out there because you just never know. And this thing comes along, and I started smoking these, and I started asking others who have smoked this, who I really trust. I said, "Is this cigar really that good?"
Yeah.
And basically, yeah, it's that good. Um, what this is, it's a mostly Nicaraguan blend from Altadis. It's a Criollo 98 wrapper. They got from a 2012 crop, Nicaraguan Seco from a 2011 crop, and then it's Nicaraguan Seco, Viso, and Lajero from the Secos from 2011, the Visos from 2010, and the Lajeros aged 2009. I
Wow.
like what Altadis does with that. They tell you what the crop is coming from with that. They've been doing that more and more. I know Caldwell does that. I like when it's not just the tobacco. All right, they're not maybe telling me what the leaf is in all these cases, but at least I can get an idea for the types of the tobaccos that are in there.
Yeah.
It comes in a gold box with a gold wrapping on it. It's a 6x54 box press Toro. You look at this cigar; it's got this that cinnamon color. The Criollo wrapper got a cinnamon color to it. Nice thin oily sheen. Beautiful box press it has. Great cigar. It had notes of it had some natural tobacco. It had an assortment of mild pepper notes. Again, they don't totally overpower you. There's a caramel and cocoa quality to that just kind of gave this cigar a little sweetness. And it just it does some nice change ups along the way. So there's points where that caramel is coming in and out, and then some of the cocoa comes in and out. Also said it was a little bit of that dried fruit sweetness. It wasn't, again, not overly sweet. Lot of flavors, a lot of notes going on with this thing. Burned perfectly. This cigar is a $9.25 cigar. I gave it a box worthy.
Wow.
I'm not even going to go further. It's the best cigar Altadis has come out with, maybe in about 4 years.
Wow. That's huge praise.
Yeah, they did a very good job with this cigar. Monte Cristo, New York, actually is probably the last one I'd say that was better. That's a very underrated cigar. But yeah, I really enjoyed this cigar. Got to see how it's going to age out. It's a limited run too, so they come in 8-count boxes. So that's part of what went into the box. That's what went into that box worthy rating too. The 8-count boxes did at $9.25. So you could have a box of these for like $80.
That's two things to comment on there, and just going quickly back to the Ramoneones. One of the things I really like is when you can get a 10-count box. So the Ramoneones I picked up were a 10-count. And for the consumer, I think if you can go with a 10-count or smaller release, it's very approachable for people to pick up one box, and if they like it, pick up a second box. I know you're not getting that 24 or 25-count box purchase up front, but I think that's very approachable for the consumer.
I agree. And I've heard, John, I've talked to certain... And I'll say this: and I've talked to certain brokers and things like that. They hate 10-count boxes because they believe if they're going to sell a box, they're going to sell. Hey, they're going to buy a 20-count box. No, I don't always think that that's the case.
Yeah.
I think one thing, for example, and I just picked up my Skinny Monsters today by Tatuaje, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a box again that under $100. I got 10 cigars in there. Had that been a 20-count box, I might not have went for it right now.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you on that. And there is something to have a box that's more affordable. We talked about the whole artisans piece of this, and there's something about that which I think is good.
And I think one of the other things to comment on there, and seeing this trend in the market, and I'm really happy about it, is box press. Because for me, 54 ring gauge is probably my cutoff point for a comfort level. And it doesn't rest comfortably in your mouth. When you box press a 54 ring gauge, even a 56 or 58, I feel like you're almost taking a ring gauge and you're reducing it by 2 to 4 sizes with a box press. So that 54 smokes like a 50 to me as a box press, and it's very comfortable. Yeah,
Paul and I have talked about that a few times as well. And I totally agree with that, which is why sometimes when we were talking to Scott earlier, sometimes when you box press those 40 and 38 Lanceros, there's not a lot of tobacco they can put in that. So I kind of understood the point he was making with that. And there have been some very good box press Lanceros that are out there. I mean, I remember Pete did the Old Tattoo, which I love that cigar a few years ago. So I mean, there are some out there, but in general, I would agree with you on that. When it takes it down to some of those more like something that's maybe a bigger ring gauge is more manageable, I enjoy it more.
So I know this is a topic that you've talked a lot about on Stogie Geeks, and it's a Vitola within a line that performs better than some of the other cigars in the line, which isn't to say they're bad, but there's sometimes a shining star within that release. And I've had the chance being on the road. I was doing some Drew Estate events. So quick hits here. The Undercrown Corona Viva, just every time I come back to that, it just heads and tails above all of the other line. It's not that the rest of the Undercrown Vitolas are great, but that Corona Viva is magical. The
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, there's something special about that. The Herrera Esteli Lonsdale. I love the Herrera Esteli.
I'm on board with you with that one as well.
Yeah.
2 for 2.
2 for 2. One of the ones that blew me away was the L'Atelier La Mission, the 1959. Now, I know there's a lot of opinions on the various Vitolas, but I keep coming back to the Robusto. Now, they call it a Robusto, and it's almost a short Robusto because it's 4.5 by 52. But it's just a magical size. It just delivers all those notes in a 4.5 by 52. And I know, maybe there's a value proponent there for some people that want a bigger cigar. But for me, it's magical in that Robusto size.
3 for 3, because I thought that was the best size in there as well.
All right, well, let's see if I can go 4 for 4 here.
Yeah.
Now I know, and not to knock Cigar Aficionado, because I really like their ratings and the way they approach things, but the big one that turned heads was the My Father Le Bijou 1922, and that's a cigar that I've got in my humidor. That's like a weekly smoke for me. But for me, the magical size is not that Toro, it's not the Torpedo. It's the Petite Robusto. The 4.5.
Oh my goodness, you can't be I'm not. There's Stogie Geeks episode. There's a Stogie Geeks episode with Stogie Sandra and I. We talked about that size. We actually said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, and I know, because you do have to blend it. You have to mix leaves, you have to pull things, you have to change leaves, you have to change primings. But within the Petite Robusto, it's a different cigar. It might as well be its own blend within that 1922 Le Bijou line, because for me, the Petite Robusto's got coffee, it's got spices, it's got pepper, it's got creaminess. It's the complete package. And I know it's not a value proponent cigar because it's only 4.5 by 50, but I will take that Petite Robusto any day over any of the other Vitolas.
Yeah, and you probably have heard, Paul and I, about a year ago, we really changed a little bit how we're doing review, especially on Coupe, where we moved to very Vitola specific and judging every cigar as a tweaked blend.
Yeah.
I think, and I think, ultimately, that's I think what plays into that a lot. And we've had a lot of fun doing that because it's given us a chance to smoke and compare and contrast. I remember when AJ Fernandez came out with the New World Connecticut's. It was a great example. Paul and I had some different. I liked the Toro and the Corona Gorda. He was much more partial to the Corona Gorda. So we saw, with a line like that, where we saw big differences in terms of, all good cigars, but there was some that we called Belle of the Balls. They really stood out with that.
And I know you guys have talked about that with some of the more recent releases with the Huehuense and the Sobremesa, that there's certain Vitolas within that line that just hit all of those marks. And I know you guys preach this on Stogie Geeks. If you try a particular size within that line and you don't like it or it's not great, don't throw away the whole line, because there can be a particular, or even more than one Vitola within that line that's just magical. The blend is magical within that size.
No, I totally agree, and there's just a lot of cases that, the best example, John, that Paul and I, when the Abosincro Nicaraguas came out last year, we got some cigars and we started smoking through those, and we smoked through, I think, every size but the 60, the Special Toro. And we were like, good cigar. It didn't wow us. And I'm sitting in my garage on a Saturday night about 11 o'clock, and I light this thing up because I couldn't go to sleep and whatever, right? So I'm lighting this, and I start texting Paul. I'm like, Paul, this 6x60 is everything we thought this blend was going to be.
Wow.
So then he tries it, and he agrees with me. Then we have Dave Garofalo on the show.
Yeah.
And he mentions it. And it was just like, yeah. No one would have expected it, especially since we went through 3 of the 4 sizes in the line, and we were kind of like, yeah, okay, fiver, box worthy. So you just never know.
Yeah, you never know.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Anything else?
No, I think that actually, I guess there's one last one that I hadn't
Sure.
tried last year. It was the Freya. Embarrassingly, I hadn't had the opportunity to sit down and try the Freya.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed because Emma. We did the interview with her. I was really excited to try, but as you know, it's tough sometimes to fit a cigar within the rotation. I was on the road. I had it in my humidor. I'm like, I got to try this cigar because I have a lot of respect for Jose. I have a lot of respect for Emma. And wow, that's a great cigar. I tried it in the Valhalla size, which is 5.5 by 50. And, for me, that's a cigar that you talk about structure and body. And I know Jose preaches structure and body. Just a great cigar from start to finish. I wish I had more. I'm gonna have to seek out more when I'm in Las Vegas. Really, really enjoyed that cigar.
I agree. It's a cigar that's aged out very well. I
Yeah.
actually like the Valhalla a lot. The Thor's Toro was really a surprise how good
Okay.
that was. With some age. Now, the only problem I've had with some of those cigars are the burns. With that, it's a very thick wrapper they're using on there.
Yeah.
I have had some burn issues with that wrapper. That's the only negative I could say about it, but not a horrendous thing. I guess I'm a little more picky on, but still, the flavors delivered, and that's a stronger cigar than you would
Yep.
think.
It
That's coming from
sneaks
Jose.
up on you. Sneaks
Yeah.
up on you.
You would think, yeah, that not from Emma. You looked at the artwork on it. I just wasn't expecting that. But yeah, I agree. They did a great job on that cigar, or Emma did. Emma actually did. We should say she did. Yeah.
Yeah, she did all the blending on that. Which, if you check out, I think she was on Dave Burke's show on Cigar Jukebox. She talked about that. She did all the blending on that, which is really great. Love to see more female blenders in the industry. So I think that kind of wraps it up for me for Stogies of the Week.
No, I think, and yep, that wraps up as well for mine. So John, hey, long overdue. I know we had you on the. Thanks for being in the bullpen for this one. I mean, I know
got it, brother.
Paul and I both appreciate it, and we will definitely have you back on for sure.
Anytime.
Yep. Well, that's going to wrap up episode 190 of Stogie Geeks. I'll thank John Reiner. Be sure to check out our other brand, Cigar Coop, for industry news and reviews. Stogie Geeks Shorts, one topic, one theme, and Stogie Geeks News, the only internet podcast dedicated to cigar news. Well, we'll be back next week. Thank you, everybody. See you then.